Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome back to Jamie Photography. In this video, we're going to do one of my classic day to nights. I'm going to try something a little bit different. I'm going to try to mimic these buildings near the Grand Central Station in Amsterdam at night time. And at night time, these buildings are lit with spotlights, floodlights from the front. It looks very good, but it often ends up with huge amounts of contrast. And it's quite a difficult shot to take at night. So what we're going to try and do is create that look that is exactly what it looks like at night, but we're going to do it from a daytime picture. Let's see how we go. Let's see how this picture turns out. So as you can see, I shot it here with at 12 mil, so you are really quite close to these buildings on the other side of the waterway here, and try to get as much of the buildings as I can. But of course, the perspective is slightly warped towards the edges because it's 12 mil on a full frame camera. So the first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to correct the perspective. So I'm going to go down to transform, and I'm going to click on guided. And what I'd like to do is pick up some of these straight lines between these buildings. So I'm just going to click on a gutter here, and I'm going to use that gutter as far down as I can. And there it is, just there. Just make sure I get that line on that gutter. And I'm going to do the same over here. I'm going to pick the edge of this brickwork on this building, and I'm going to take that down to there where it and that will pull those buildings straight, as you can see. I'm also going to pull one across from left to right on this water line to make sure that that is perfectly horizontal. So that looks pretty good. I'm going to click done there. So I like that. Looks the perspective looks right. I'm just going to go into the crop tool, and I'm just going to bring that crop over to the edge of that building there, because that half a building on the edge sort of disturbs the edge of the image a little bit. And I'll probably do the same on this side here. Just go to the edge of that building there, and then we'll just see where a 16:9 takes us. There we go. That's not too bad. I'm just going to bring that waterline down to the rule of thirds line there. Just gives the picture a bit of balance. So I'm going to accept that by hitting return. Happy with that. So we've got the perspective as we want it. So I'm also going to just tweak the color here a little bit, bring the saturation up, not too much. Just take a little bit into the blue and add a little bit of magenta just to balance those colors out. So they're and maybe add a little bit of vibrance there just to make it pop just a little bit. Take that saturation down just a tad. Okay, so now we're at an image that's sort of a good starting point. I probably just want to take out these two little seagulls sat here. So I'm going to go into the healing tool, and I'm going to take a small brush here. And you will notice with the new updated Lightroom that you get three options. You get content aware remove, you get your standard heal, and you get the clone tool now, which obviously we always used to have to go into Photoshop to use. So this is really good news that we have these now available to us in Lightroom. It saves the jump into Photoshop and back. So I'm going to go for content aware removal, and I'm just going to pop that on top of the seagull there, and same there, just to get rid of those, and just click away from that to see did a good job removing those. I'm going to hold down the space bar, and I'm just going to move across and see if there's anything else here that is distracting. I don't know what that is there. It's a little bit distracting. So same thing, go in and just take that out. I'll move across here. I don't like the graffiti on the end of this little thing here, so we'll take that out. And also, I think these lines over here can be a little bit much. So I'm just going to paint those out as well, just to remove those. That's it. Let's get rid of those. Same there. I know they're ties holding the building up, but they don't look particularly good. And let's just go in here and have a go at the removing the graffiti. I'm just going to increase the magnification, and I'm going to make the brush quite small so I can just paint out the lettering. And it's amazing that they get down there to actually do graffiti. I suppose they come down these steps here. So and then let's see with a smaller brush still, see if we can just take out the letters here. And try to keep the side of this tank or air conditioning unit, whatever it might be, intact. So let's just accept that. Yeah, that's not too bad. There's a little bit of a line on the edge there, so I'm just going to go over to the heel tool there and just draw along the edge of that line and move that in. And hopefully that looks, yeah, that's pretty good. So I'm going to zoom back out, go back out to fit. Yeah, that looks perfect. Right, so now we've had a little bit of a tidy up. We're going to do my standard approach to day to night, which is we're going to reduce the brightness of this scene, and we're going to bring it down by probably two and a half stops, I think, something like that. There we go, 2.5 stops. So it's nice and dark. And I'm also going to just back off the clarity just a little bit, so that the edges and the lines are not too overwhelming. I'm also going to bring in go into masks, and thanks for that. And I'm going to go to select linear gradient, and I'm just going to bring that down from the top, and then I'm going to subtract from that linear gradient the subtract, and I'm going to select the subject, and hopefully that will calculate that. There we go, the building is the subject. So I've intersected that linear gradient with the removal of the object, so it's only the sky there. So now when we darken the sky still further, it only darkens the sky, not the buildings, which is what we want. There we go, that's pretty good. And I'm going to duplicate that mask, and I'm going to make that one smaller, so it's just the top part of the image there. I'm just going to give it a slight slant as it's coming across, because I think these clouds look quite nice over here. Right, now what we're going to do is we're going to relight the scene, and we're going to put radial gradients on the buildings as though there were floodlights coming up, and I'll show you how we do that. We take a new radial gradient, and we'll start with this big building here, and what we'll do is we will simulate from the water line as though there is a floodlight lighting up the building. Okay, so I'm going to bring up the exposure back to the same level that we were at. So we're going to come up here about I think almost to the top, actually, about 3.5 here. I'm just going to make that a little bit wider, and I'm going to add a bit of clarity to that shot, and I'm just going to add some color as though it's a floodlight. So I'm just going to bring in some yellow and a little bit of magenta on there. Now we would get the reflection down onto the water, so that's okay. I might even bring this over a little bit to the left and actually create two of these. So I duplicate the mask and move that over there, and you'll see that there's two separate floodlights lighting this building. So we can do that. We can duplicate again, and we can take another one over to this building over here. Just alter the position slightly. There we go. Another one, duplicate again, and work our way along these buildings as though there's little floodlights lighting up each of the buildings. So duplicate, add a second one in there, and we just keep duplicating and putting more lights on these buildings, remembering to just move that out of the way. just remembering to move that over, just rotate that slightly. Now you will see they're going up into the sky, so we do need to be a little bit careful that we don't go too far up in the sky. We can remove that by subtracting the sky, but the lights themselves wouldn't go all the way to the top of the building, so I'm just going to bring those down slightly so they don't go all the way to the top. I'm going to make that one narrower still, I think. That's it. We'll bring that down, just bring that over. So it looks like we are actually placing these floodlights along the front of the buildings. And then we're going to copy again, duplicate this mask again, and we're going to go the other way, and we're going to light up these buildings over here. So duplicate the mask, move it over, just rotate it slightly because the lights wouldn't always be perfectly straight. That's it. And may even do this this building here. So there's a floodlight coming up from there. Keep duplicating, keep moving across, and hopefully we'll get quite a nice effect once we get to the end of doing all these buildings here. There's another one there. I'm going to put 2 on this building, I think. Oh, we did 2 there, look. So 2 at the same time. Move this back over this side. Just move that down. If we do the mask, we should get 2 again because I duplicated the mask. Now you see here it's gone on the boat. Okay, on the boats here. So we do need to remove that. So what I'm going to do is just finish off popping in these last ones over here. There we go. I might just duplicate that radial gradient, a single one, to go over to the edge there. So where we've gone over onto this boat, what we need to do is we need to subtract from that. So there's the one we're on, which is mask number 2, copy 13. We're going to subtract a brush. We're going to select the brush with a little bit of feather and 100% flow. And remember, it's a minus. So if we zoom in on that area where the boat is, there we go. We can take the brush a little bit smaller there, and we can just paint along on this boat. So the boat effectively does not light up because we're trying to make out that the lights are actually behind this. So just going to come along there, paint the bottom of the boat out as well. Same with this boat. We've got a bit of light on there as well. So just take that out. We'll do the other one at the end in a minute. But it's important that we create a shadow here. So now we'll reduce the flow and increase the feather to 100%. So we reduce the flow to 35, feather to 100, and then we're just going to go along the bottom of that boat line there and just create a little bit of a darker area in front of that boat, so the lights don't reflect down onto the water until the other side of the boat. Whilst I'm here, I'm actually going to create a new brush on its own. So create a new brush. I'm going to drop the exposure down slightly, and I'm just going to paint the side of this boat in a little bit darker than it actually is. So just bring that down a bit further. There we go. Just darken this area down so we're not too bright. There we go. I'm going to move over, and what I'm going to do is just select that boat there. It's still a little bit of light there, so I'm just going to subtract from that one as well. So we'll go back to the brush on that one, and I'm just going to take that out there. That's good. Moving over again, I'm going to click on this one because we've got one here as well. So we just need to do the same there. So we're going to subtract a brush with quite a low feather, high flow, and I'm just going to bring that in on the back of that boat there and just darken that area down so the boat's creating a bit of a shadow there, and then bring the feather up, bring the flow down just to blend that edge away a little bit. There we go. I'm going to do the same here. I'm going to subtract from this one, a brush. We're going to have quite a high flow, low feather, and we're just going to paint out this bollard here. So I'm clicking and then holding down the shift and clicking again to do a straight line, and then I'm going to go to the center, hold down the shift, click, and you get a straight line, just to darken that down a little bit further. There we go. And I'm going to take a little bit out on there as well. So let's move that across. So we'll click on this one, and we're going to subtract another brush, and we're just going to take that edge of that causeway out there. So that looks pretty good. So let's jump back to the full size. So just look in there. Yep, that looks good. So we're just going to accept those for the moment. So we need to have a look and see whether that's right. At the moment, it doesn't look quite right. So what we're going to need to do is have a play with the overall settings to see if we can improve that. So I might brighten the whole scene slightly. I might increase the contrast, and I might increase the highlights, and maybe even bring up the shadows a little bit, just to see where we are. I'm going to go into the whites as well. Hold down the Option or Alt key so I can move the slider. You see we've got a lot of white in there, so I can bring that right back, and then do the same with the blacks. Hold down the Option or Alt key and just bring in a little bit of black into that image there. So yeah, so I think we do need to look at each of these and maybe make them different heights, maybe not quite so high, and try to change the way the light looks on each building so it's a little bit more random, so it looks a little bit more natural. So I'm just going to go through and just change, clicking on the actual mask there, and then just bringing them down a little bit so they're not quite so high, so it looks a little bit more realistic. Same here. And the good thing is with the masks, once you've put them in, a lot of people think that you just go into this mask menu and try and figure out which one it was that you were working on. The good thing is that you can literally, whilst you're in the mask mode, you can see all the masks as they show themselves. So you can literally just work from one to the other, clicking on them one by one. I can jump up to here if I want to, easily just move between the masks as we go through. So you can go back and readjust every mask separately, and you can get quite good at moving from one mask to another without too much hassle. That one there is slightly too bright. I'm just going to dim that one down a little bit. I think that one there is also a little bit too bright. So again, you literally can click very quickly, and you can go through and make changes without having to go back into the sort of mask menu to look at which one was which and which ones you were using. You can literally just click on them. So I think we're making good progress here. Just going to make a couple of minor changes. This one here is still too bright, so just bringing those down slightly. That's better. Over here I think just a little bit too bright. That one's okay, maybe a bit darker for that one actually. And I think we're getting close to making it look like we are happy with the lighting effect. So I'm just going to accept the masks, and I'm just going to have a play now with the file. I'm going to bring up the shadows a bit more, and I'm going to bring up the exposure just a little bit more as well, just to get a sort of effect that you've got some lights on, but it is actually quite dark. I'm going to boost the vibrance, try and bring up that color contrast, just doing the saturation away just a little bit. I think you get quite a nice effect with those lights, looking like there's lights there. We could, if we had time, we could go through and light individual windows. It would take a lot of time. There's a lot of windows here. But instead, I think I'm going to be quite happy with that. But I'm going to do something with this sky up here. So I'm going to go back into masks. I'm going to create a new mask, a new radial gradient, and I'm going to pull one out over this cloud area here. Just rotate it slightly so it's never straight, because nature's never perfectly perpendicular. It's good to always come off axis slightly, and maybe we can increase the contrast and the clarity for the sky. Maybe bring in a little bit of color there, just to warm the sky up a little bit, a bit of magenta as well, just to bring that up. And I would like to duplicate that. So right click, duplicate, and I want that reflection almost down in the water here. So you've got quite a bright patch in the water. I'm actually going to bring up the brightness there just a little bit, and it's got a greenish tinge, so we do need to increase the amount of magenta just to take that green tinge out. Yeah, that looks pretty good. So let's just accept the mask and have a look at it. So I'm just going to press F for full screen, so we can just have a look to see whether we're happy with that. I think it's still a bit too contrasty, so I'm going to try and bring that contrast down a little bit, just to break some of those blacks up, and just bring the black up a little bit, just to balance it off. Yeah, that's pretty good. Now this water's got a very orange hue to it, and I think what I'd really like to do is look to see if we can change the color of that a little bit, bring some of that blue and these colors in a little bit more. So I'm going to grab a mask, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab a brush. Now this brush is going to have 100% flow, 0 feather, because what we're going to do is we're going to draw a line literally across here. So I'm going to take quite a big brush here, and I'm going to come in on the edge, click once, go all the way to the other side, hold down the shift key and click again. So I've effectively created this straight line mask here, and I'm just going to paint the rest of that in. Now what you can do is, if you feel that that edge is too harsh on your mask that you've made, if you hold down the Option or Alt key, it will give you the opposite brush to what you already have. So as you can see, we have a positive brush because we've just painted it in. If I hold down Alt, it will change to a negative, right? So whilst I'm holding down the Alt or Option key, I can bring the feather up, and I can bring the flow down a little bit, say 60%. I can then take another click on this line here, holding down the shift key while still holding down the Option or Alt key, and I can click at the other end. And what I can do is I can go backwards and forwards a few times, and I can soften that edge, because I'm subtracting, remember, because I'm holding down the Option or Alt key, and I can create a feathered edge to that mask, and that works quite well. So now that's masked in, we can now have a look at whether we can change the color here. So whilst that's masked, we can look at either the hue slider to see if we can change that. So if I move the hue slider now, I can change the color of the water, literally go dramatics. Like you can see, you can go from blues and purples and magentas. So if I go back to the center, and if we just move slightly, if we move away from the green just a little bit more to the left, you'll see that brings the color in. If I just double click, that goes back. You can see that we've got that color there. We just want to go slightly away from the green, and that will bring, if you go too far, you get too much magenta there. We can go there. And if you think, well, I wanted to go a bit further to get the color, but there's strong magenta, of course you can always go up and bring the magenta back on the slider up here to try to find where we are. The only thing is that you will go back to the original color if you go too far. So I'm just going to go back a little bit to there. I'm just going to back the saturation off just a little bit, and I'm going to add just a little bit of blue so it mimics the sky just a little bit up there. Works quite well actually. Yeah, so that's how you can use the hue slider to look at that. You can also go down to the color grading tool as well, and you can always look at whether you want to affect the particular colors here. So for example, I could take the highlights, and I could change the highlights for the whole image. I could change the highlights and give it more of a orange or more of a green or more of a red. You know, you can pick, and the blue's quite nice. And if I go into the blue area like that and then just back it back towards the center just a little bit so it's not too strong, I can create that sort of blue look. And also you have the HSL sliders, hue, saturation, and luminance. So we can pick up on the reds and the yellows here. So we could always, in saturation, add a little bit more red to the reds, add a little bit more orange to the orange, and a little bit more yellow to the yellows. So we can boost these buildings, and we could also add a little bit more to the blue if we wanted to. So you can affect those different areas, and maybe back the green off just a little bit, and maybe bring the magenta down just a little bit to get that really strong color effect that we've got it going on in there. So yeah, I think I'm quite happy with that. I'm just going to accept the masks, and I'm going to go back up to the top and just bring that brightness up just a little bit more, not too much, just a little bit more. And yeah, I think there's a couple of these lights are still a bit bright, so forgive me. I'm just going to pop back in there and just bring down those brightnesses just a little bit more. There's a couple of them are really quite bright there. Just going to back those off a little bit more, and then I think we've got ourselves a finished image. I'm liking this quite a lot, I have to say. So that one over there is still very bright, so let's bring them down. Yep. And that one in the middle, just back him off a little bit there. I think we've got ourselves a finished image. So I'm just going to accept those masks, pop it into full screen and have a look at it. Yeah, I like that. That gives us sort of, the lights are on, but it's still daylight. We've brought all those colours forward, nice saturated look to the image, beautiful blue sky. And yeah, I've got to say, I think that's a wrap. So hopefully you enjoyed that. It's a very gentle day tonight. You have the inference of lighting, but we've really sort of boosted the contours, the contrast, and the clarity of the buildings themselves. And yeah, I'm really quite happy with that. I might even add a little bit more clarity just to make it pop that little bit more there. And I think we're done. So hopefully you've enjoyed that, and you enjoyed us putting this image together. And be great if you would click like if you did like, and be wonderful if you could subscribe to help build my channel with me. So until the next one, thank you very much. Bye bye for now.